Princess Taya stood at the great window of the royal ship, watching the blue-green planet grow larger as they approached. Earth, such a simple name for a world that had caused so much discussion among the Quan High Council. Your Highness, we will dock at the human orbital station in 15 minutes, reported Captain Hoon from behind her. She didn't turn. Have they sent their delegation? Yes, Your Highness. A small group. Mostly diplomats, but they included military personnel as well. Of course they did. Humans were known for their wariness, despite being relatively new to interstellar travel. The Quan had been observing them for decades, watching their rapid technological advancement with growing interest. Teha adjusted her formal regalia, making sure the royal insignia on her collar sat perfectly straight. The metallic scales of her ceremonial armor caught the light from the distant sun, sending rainbow reflections across the viewing chamber. Her natural scales, a deep blue-gray that marked her as royal bloodline, remained mostly hidden except for her face and hands. Remember, her father had instructed before she left, these humans have potential as vassals, but they are unpredictable. Show them the glory of the Quan, but reveal nothing of our weaknesses. As if she needed such obvious advice, Princess Taya had represented the Empire in 17 first contact missions. Each had ended with a new species acknowledging Quan's superiority, either through peaceful treaties or necessary displays of force. Humans would be no different. The royal ship docked with barely a tremor. Quan technology was nothing if not precise. Teha took her position in the reception chamber, surrounded by her advisors and guards. They stood in perfect formation, as still as statues, a living display of Quan discipline. When the airlock opened, the first humans entered cautiously. Teha observed them with scientific detachment. They were shorter than the Quan, with soft skin instead of scales. Their movements seemed awkward and inefficient. "Welcome aboard the Imperial vessel Eternal Wisdom," said Advisor Jiho, his voice translated perfectly through the communication field. "You stand in the presence of Her Royal Highness, Princess Taya of the Quan Empire, daughter of Emperor Minho, keeper of the 17 truths." The human at the front, female, Taya noted, bowed deeply. "We are honored, Your Highness. I am Ambassador Lin of the United Earth Government. May I present our delegation?" The humans were introduced one by one. Diplomats, scientists, cultural experts, all predictable choices for first contact. Teha maintained her perfect stillness, acknowledging each with the slightest nod, careful to show the precise amount of interest required by protocol, neither too much nor too little. And finally, the ambassador continued, Lieutenant Kim, representing Earth's United Defense Force. The human male stepped forward, and for the first time in her diplomatic career, Princess Taya felt something unexpected. Lieutenant Kim was tall for a human, almost reaching Quan height. Unlike the others who seemed slightly intimidated by the royal presence, he moved with confident ease. He bowed, correctly measured, neither too deep nor too shallow. But when he straightened, he looked directly into her eyes. A shock ran through Taya's system. No non-Quan had ever maintained such direct eye contact with royalty. It was considered either a challenge or a grave insult throughout the known galaxy. Yet this human did so without any apparent awareness of his transgression. "Your Highness," he said, his voice deeper than the others. Taya felt her secondary heart chamber flutter strangely. Her facial scales, responsive to emotional states, began to shift color before she could assert control. For 3 heartbeats, an eternity by Quan standards, she found herself unable to form words. "Lieutenant," she finally acknowledged, fighting to maintain composure. His eyes, dark brown, she noted with unwanted precision, showed no fear. Instead, there was something else there. Curiosity, perhaps, or assessment. He was studying her just as she studied him. "Earth looks forward to peaceful relations between our worlds," he added, still holding her gaze. The diplomatic protocols she had memorized centuries ago seemed suddenly distant and unclear. Why was her body responding in this manner? She had faced dangerous predators on 12 worlds without a tremor. She had stared down enemy battleships without blinking. Yet this single unarmed human was somehow affecting her composure. "Are you well, Your Highness?" Lieutenant Kim asked, breaking protocol again by speaking without being addressed first. The ambassador looked horrified at his military escort's breach of etiquette. The other humans shifted uncomfortably. Even the Quan advisors tensed, waiting for their princess to deliver an appropriate rebuke. But instead of anger, Teja felt something entirely different. Concern. In his eyes, there was genuine worry for her well-being. "How unusual." "Perfectly," she replied, the lie coming smoothly despite the internal confusion. She straightened her already perfect posture. "Let us proceed with the treaty discussions." As they moved toward the conference chamber, Teja found her attention repeatedly drawn to the lieutenant. Something about his movements, his directness, his lack of proper fear, it was all deeply irregular, deeply interesting. The meeting progressed with formal exchanges and preliminary agreements. Teja spoke the traditional words, performed the ceremonial gestures, but part of her mind remained focused on the puzzle of her reaction to the human soldier. Later, alone in her private chamber, Princess Teja requested access to the ship's medical database. She needed to understand why her usually perfect control had faltered. There must be a logical explanation, perhaps some unknown effect of Earth's atmosphere or a chemical reaction to human pheromones. There could be no other reason why, for the first time in her 300-year life, a princess of the Quan Empire had struggled to maintain her legendary composure. The demonstration arena echoed with the sounds of Quan combat drills. Princess Teja watched from the royal observation platform as her elite guards performed a flawless sequence of maneuvers, their movements precise and synchronized. Not a single wasted motion or hint of emotion, the perfect display of Quan's superiority. The human delegation observed with appropriate respect, though Teja noticed they didn't seem particularly impressed. Lieutenant Kim stood slightly apart from the others, his eyes following the movements with analytical interest rather than awe. When the Quan guards finished their demonstration, they stood at perfect attention, faces blank, awaiting acknowledgement. Teja gave the traditional single nod of approval. "A remarkable display of discipline," Ambassador Lin said politely. "The warriors of the Quan Empire train from hatching," Advisor Jiho explained. "Perfect control is achieved through decades of practice." "Now we would observe your combat techniques," Teja announced. The cultural exchange agreement included military demonstrations from both species, though she doubted the humans could show anything of interest. Lieutenant Kim stepped forward. "With your permission, Your Highness, we've prepared a small squad demonstration." Teja gestured her approval, settling back to observe what would surely be a primitive display compared to Quan precision. To her surprise, the human soldiers moved differently than expected. Where Quan fighters were measured and methodical, the humans were quick and adaptive. They worked in pairs and small groups, calling out to each other, sometimes even laughing as they adjusted their tactics mid-exercise. "They're being emotional during combat training," Teja said to Jiho. "How inefficient." "Humans believe communication improves their effectiveness," Jiho replied dismissively. The humans finished their display with a successful completion of their objective, a simulated rescue operation. When the exercise ended, Lieutenant Kim and another soldier slapped their palms together in a peculiar gesture. Teja tilted her head. What was that movement? Lieutenant Kim approached the royal platform, stopping at the proper distance. "What movement, Your Highness?" "The hand collision." He smiled, that unusual movement of facial muscles the humans use to indicate pleasure. "That's called a high five. It's a celebration. Humans celebrate victory oddly," Princess Teja observed. "It's about shared joy," Kim explained, demonstrating again with another soldier. His smile was different this time, wider, with teeth showing. Teja found it strangely disarming. "Joy has no place in combat," she stated. "With respect, Your Highness, we find that positive reinforcement builds stronger teams." Shared celebration creates bonds that make soldiers fight harder for each other. Teja considered this. The concept was alien to Quan military philosophy, which valued individual perfection and emotional control above all. Yet she couldn't deny the effectiveness of what she had witnessed. I would like to observe more human customs, she decided. For diplomatic purposes, 3 days into the expanded cultural exchange program, Princess Teja sat at her private terminal long after the ship's night cycle had begun. The screen displayed human facial expressions, categorized and labeled. She had been researching instead of sleeping, finding herself oddly fascinated by the range of human emotions displayed so openly on their faces. She had personally cataloged 17 different versions of Lieutenant Kim's smile from observation and security recordings. There was his diplomatic smile, restrained, practiced; his greeting smile, brief, professional; his listening smile, slight, attentive; and many more. The one that occurred when he spoke with his fellow soldiers was particularly interesting, unguarded, and genuine. Teja couldn't decide which was most intriguing. Such thoughts were hardly appropriate for a Quan princess, yet she found herself unable to stop this research. The next evening, a formal dinner was arranged to celebrate the successful beginning of the exchange program. Humans and Quan sat together, though eating different foods due to their biological differences. Princess Teja occupied the head position, as protocol demanded, with Lieutenant Kim seated halfway down the table, engaged in conversation with other humans. "Your Highness," her advisor Jiho whispered during a pause in the formal dining rituals, "you've been watching the human lieutenant for 7.3 minutes without blinking." Teja immediately shifted her gaze, embarrassed to be caught in such unprincess-like behavior. "I'm studying their weaknesses," she replied too quickly. Jiho's antennae flattened in disapproval, a clear sign of concern among her species. "Remember your station. The Quan do not fraternize with lesser species." "I am well aware of proper diplomatic boundaries," Teja said coldly. "The Emperor would not approve of your interest in this human." "There is no interest beyond scientific observation," she insisted, though her secondary heart chamber fluttered uncomfortably at the lie. Jiho bowed slightly. "Of course, Your Highness." Teja nodded, resolving to maintain proper royal distance. Yet moments later, she found her gaze drifting back to Lieutenant Kim as he told a story that made the other humans laugh. Their faces lit up with emotion, so open and unguarded compared to the careful control of her own people. When Kim caught her watching, he didn't look away as a properly respectful being should. Instead, he smiled. Variation number 12 in her catalog, the one that created small lines around his eyes and made them seem to sparkle. Teja felt her facial scales shift color slightly before she could control them. The reaction was becoming more frequent and harder to suppress, a fact that both alarmed and intrigued her. Later that night, in the privacy of her chamber, Princess Teja made an entry in her personal log. Human emotional displays appear inefficient at first analysis, but may serve unknown social functions. Their combat effectiveness, despite lack of proper control, suggests alternative strategies worth studying. For complete understanding of human behavior, more direct cultural exchange is recommended. She paused, then added, "Lieutenant Kim has been assigned as my primary human cultural liaison beginning tomorrow. His directness makes him suitable for honest exchange of information." Teja closed the log, knowing she had just created a diplomatic excuse to spend more time observing the one human who had somehow managed to affect her legendary composure. The Earth Embassy on Neutral Station gleamed in the artificial sunlight. After 2 weeks of successful cultural exchange aboard the Quan royal ship, Princess Teja had agreed to continue discussions in neutral territory, a space station built specifically for interspecies diplomacy. Teja walked the corridors with Lieutenant Kim beside her. Only 2 guards followed at a respectful distance, fewer than protocol demanded, but she had insisted on a more relaxed approach for this phase of negotiations. "This station houses 18 different species," Kim explained as they passed a group of tall, tentacled beings engaged in musical conversation. Some have been visiting Earth for decades in secret. The Quan were aware of this. Taya replied. We monitor all significant galactic interactions. Kim smiled. Facial expression variation 14, the one that appeared when she said something he found amusingly predictable. Of course you do, Your Highness. Over the past days, their exchanges had grown less formal. Lieutenant Kim had been assigned as her cultural liaison, a role he performed with surprising skill. He explained human customs without condescension and asked thoughtful questions about Quan culture. The diplomatic reception begins in 1 hour, Taya noted as they approached the Earth Embassy's main entrance. I should prepare. Kim nodded. I'll escort you to your quarters and meet you at the reception. The royal suite was modest by Quan standards but acceptable. Taya changed into her formal diplomatic attire, armor plates of shifting metallic hues over a bodysuit of royal blue. Her facial scales she left uncovered, though she applied the traditional royal pigments that enhanced their natural patterns. Why she spent extra time on this preparation, she refused to analyze. Lieutenant Kim was waiting outside her door when she emerged, now dressed in his formal military uniform. His eyes widened slightly at her appearance. Your Highness, you look. He seemed to search for a proper word. Appropriate for the occasion, she suggested. Magnificent, he said instead. Taya felt her scales shift color before she could prevent it. This spontaneous reaction was becoming more frequent in his presence, a fact that both annoyed and intrigued her. They walked together toward the diplomatic reception hall. Other species turned to watch them pass. The Quan princess and the human soldier, an unusual pairing. There will be representatives from 12 worlds tonight, Kim explained. Some are Quan allies, others are neutral. A few have expressed concern about Earth-Quan relations. Concern? Taya raised an eyebrow ridge. Why would our diplomatic relations concern others? Not everyone is happy about Earth gaining such a powerful ally, Kim said. There are those who preferred when humans were isolated and unprotected. Before Taya could respond, a thunderous boom shook the corridor. The lights flickered, then emergency illumination kicked in. A second explosion, closer this time, sent them staggering against the wall. What's happening? Taya demanded, automatically reaching for the ceremonial weapon at her side. Kim's hand went to his own sidearm. His expression instantly transformed from diplomatic to alert. He tapped his communication device. Security, report. Only static answered. The third explosion rocked the diplomatic quarters directly, sending debris everywhere. Through the smoke, Princess Taya saw Lieutenant Kim rushing toward her. Stay down, he shouted, covering her body with his as another blast hit. No one had ever touched her royal person without permission. By Quan law, it was an offense punishable by exile or worse. Yet, instead of outrage, she felt something else entirely, a strange sense of security as his body sheltered hers from falling debris. The wall beside them cracked open, and armed figures burst through. Their faces were covered with breathing masks, their species indistinguishable beneath combat armor. The princess, one of them hissed. Take her alive. Kim pulled Taya behind a fallen support beam and drew his weapon. Stay behind me. I am not defenseless, Lieutenant, she said, drawing her own ceremonial blade. Though designed for ritual, the molecular edge could cut through most materials. When the attackers broke through their cover, Kim fought with unexpected skill. His movements were nothing like the training exercises. They were fluid, adaptable, and lethal. He disabled 2 attackers with precisely aimed shots from his sidearm. A third attacker circled around, weapon aimed at Taya. She reacted instinctively, activating the bioluminescent defense mechanism in her facial scales, a royal ability she wasn't supposed to reveal to outsiders. The sudden, intense flash of bioelectric light temporarily blinded the attacker, allowing her to disable him with a sweep of her blade. More attackers poured through the breach. Kim grabbed Taya's arm and pulled her toward an emergency exit. We need to move. They ran through smoke-filled corridors, the sounds of fighting echoing around them. Kim's communication device crackled to life with reports of coordinated attacks throughout the station. The reception was a target, he said grimly. They knew all the dignitaries would be gathered there. They found temporary shelter in a maintenance room, sealing the door behind them. Kim immediately began checking the perimeter while Taya used her own communication technology to contact her ship. The royal vessel is on lockdown, she reported. Emergency protocols activated. Kim nodded, wincing as he moved his arm. Taya noticed the dark stains spreading on his uniform sleeve. You're injured, she said, moving closer to examine the wound. It's nothing, he insisted, but his face was pale. Sit down, Lieutenant. To her surprise, he obeyed. Taya opened a small compartment in her ceremonial armor and removed a vial of healing gel. A Quan medical technology rarely shared with other species. This will help, she said, carefully applying the gel to his wounded arm. His skin felt strange beneath her fingers, warm and soft compared to Quan scales. You never mentioned you could do that light thing with your face, Kim said, watching her work. There are many things my people don't reveal, she admitted, hands trembling slightly as she finished treating his wound. Just as there are many things about humans I find difficult to process. Like what? He asked softly. Taya hesitated. The crisis had broken through normal diplomatic barriers. In the quiet of their hiding place, with danger still lurking outside, truth seemed suddenly important. Like why my composure falters when you are near, she confessed. It's most troubling. Kim's expression. She hadn't catalogued this one before. It was serious but somehow gentle, his eyes never leaving hers. If it helps, he said quietly, I've been having trouble maintaining proper military bearing around you too. Before she could respond, her communication device activated. Princess Teva, this is Commander June. We have secured the main corridors and are searching for you. What is your location? The moment of connection broken, Taya returned to her royal composure. Maintenance section, level 4, 2 for emergency extraction. But as they prepared to leave their shelter, she found herself looking at Lieutenant Kim with new understanding. Something had changed between them. Something neither Quan protocol nor human military regulations had prepared them for. Princess Taya stood before the communication array in her private chambers aboard the royal vessel. Her wounds from the attack had been treated, but a different kind of discomfort now twisted inside her. The ship hummed quietly around her as she prepared for the inevitable. The communication crystal glowed blue, then projected a massive hologram of Emperor Minho. Even reduced to light, her father's presence filled the room with cold authority. His facial scales were arranged in the formal pattern of imperial displeasure. Daughter, he said, the word carrying no warmth. Explain yourself. Taya lowered her eyes respectfully, but kept her posture straight. The attack was well coordinated, Father. We believe the Solari faction was responsible. They targeted all diplomatic participants. I am not concerned about the attack, Emperor Minho interrupted. I am concerned about your response to it. Of course, he had already been fully briefed. Nothing escaped the Quan intelligence network. You defended a human with royal abilities. The Emperor's hologram towered over Taya. You've compromised yourself and our mission. Taya fought to keep her scales from shifting color with emotion. The bioluminescent defense was necessary in the moment. No lasting harm. You revealed royal genetic capabilities to outsiders, capabilities that have remained secret for 12 generations. Father, I've gained insights into humans that... Enough. Emperor Minho's voice echoed through the chamber. You will return immediately. General Dad will replace you. The hologram flickered with his anger. The human has affected your judgment. This is precisely why the royal protocols exist. Lesser species cannot be trusted with our secrets or our attachment. Taya wanted to argue but knew it would only strengthen his resolve. Instead, she bowed deeply. As you command, Father. When the communication ended, she stood motionless for several minutes, her mind racing against her carefully constructed emotional control. 3 hours later, in her sealed quarters, Princess Taha did something unprecedented in her royal life. She activated a personal communication device, one not connected to the official Quan networks, and accessed the Galactic Communication Hub. She navigated to a section called Galactic Reddit, a forum where beings from across known space could post questions and discuss topics anonymously. The security systems automatically disguised her species markers, letting her appear as just another curious galactic citizen. With careful wording, she posted, "Species integration question. Has anyone experienced physiological responses to other species that resemble attraction? Asking for diplomatic research purposes." She set the device aside, half expecting no responses. Such topics were rarely discussed openly in Quan society. What happened between her and Lieutenant Kim during the crisis, the strange feelings, the protective impulses on both sides, was something she had no context for understanding. To her surprise, responses began appearing almost immediately. "Cerulean here, married to a Tauran for 12 cycles. First time we met, my breathing sacs nearly collapsed from excitement. Now we have 3 hybrid children. Follow your biology. It happens. My carapace turns bright orange whenever my human partner laughs. Embarrassing, but worth it. There's a whole medical field studying interspecies attraction. The biochemistry is fascinating. Some reactions are compatible across vastly different biologies." Taha read each response carefully, her scientific mind cataloging the information while another part of her, a part she rarely acknowledged, felt something like relief. She was not the only one. This strange reaction to Lieutenant Kim wasn't some royal deficiency or diplomatic failing. Another message appeared that caught her attention. Quan royalty are particularly susceptible to cross-species bonding due to their enhanced emotional sensors. It's why they have such strict protocols about interaction with other species. Taha froze. Someone knew she was Quan despite the anonymizing features. She quickly closed the connection, heart racing. Had she been discovered? Would this reach her father? Meanwhile, across the station, Lieutenant Kim sat in a secure briefing room. 3 senior Earth officers faced him, their expressions serious. The attack was no random terrorist action, Colonel Park explained. Our intelligence suggests it was designed to disrupt Earth-Quan relations before they could solidify. By whom? Kim asked. That's still unclear. But there's something else you need to know. Major Lee pushed a data pad across the table. We've intercepted communications from the Quan High Command. There are indications they've been scanning Earth's defenses while engaging in these diplomatic talks. Kim shook his head. That doesn't make sense. Princess Taha has been genuinely working toward peaceful relations. The princess may not be privy to all aspects of Quan strategy, Colonel Park said, or she may be a very skilled diplomat. Kim thought of how Taha had protected him during the attack, how she had revealed her royal abilities without hesitation when he was in danger. That couldn't be faked. Your new orders, Major Lee said firmly. Distance yourself from the princess. Intelligence suggests the Quan are planning something. We need your objectivity. Kim kept his face carefully neutral. Understood, sir. Later, in his quarters, Kim paced back and forth. His arm still tingled where Taha had applied the Quan healing gel. The wound had nearly vanished, technology the Quan supposedly never shared with other species. He thought about her confession in the maintenance room, about how her composure faltered in his presence. He'd seen the color changes in her facial scales when they spoke, despite her attempts to control them. Among Quan, such reactions were considered deeply personal. Kim sat at his communication terminal and drafted an official message accepting his reassignment away from the princess. His duty was clear. His orders were clear. And yet, he opened a different channel, a secure private line he'd established with Taha for emergency communications during the cultural exchange. He hesitated only briefly before typing. We need to talk. The message sent, encrypted and untraceable. Kim knew it was possibly a career-ending move, perhaps even treasonous if the suspicions about the Quan were accurate. But something deeper than duty pushed him forward, a conviction that what was happening between them mattered beyond politics and military strategy. His terminal pinged almost immediately with a response. The Royal Garden Section, midnight station time. Come alone. Kim leaned back, thinking about everything that had happened since he first looked into those alien eyes and saw something unexpected looking back at him. Whatever came next would change everything. For him, for her, and possibly for their worlds. The Royal Garden Section of Neutral Station was a marvel of cross-species botanical engineering. Plants from 18 worlds thrived together under carefully calibrated light, creating an environment where all could breathe comfortably. At midnight, when the station's lighting dimmed to simulate night, the garden glowed with bioluminescent flora. Princess Toya arrived first, having slipped away from her guards with practiced ease. She stood beneath a tall earth tree, an oak, Lieutenant Kim had called it, and waited. The formal robes of Quan royalty had been replaced with a simple travel suit that wouldn't draw attention. Kim appeared precisely on time, moving through the shadows with military efficiency. When he saw her, his pace slowed, as if approaching something precious and fragile. "You came," she said. "Of course." He stopped a respectful distance away. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I've been ordered to return home immediately," Taya replied. "And you've likely been ordered to stay away from me." Kim nodded. "They think your people are planning something. That the diplomacy is a cover. And my father believes I've been compromised by human influence." Her scales shifted slightly, reflecting the garden's gentle light. "Perhaps we have both failed our duties." "Have we?" Kim moved closer. "Or are we the only ones truly succeeding at what diplomacy is meant to accomplish?" Taya considered this. In the soft light, with no others watching, she allowed herself to study his face openly. The strange, wonderful face that had somehow broken through centuries of Quan emotional discipline. "I accessed information," she said, "about interspecies connections. It seems we are not the first to experience such reactions." "No," Kim agreed. "Humans have formed bonds with several species already. It's part of our adaptability. The Quan discourage such attachments. They are considered weakness." "Is that what you believe?" he asked quietly. Taya realized she was at a turning point, not just in this conversation, but in her understanding of herself and her people's place in the galaxy. "I believe," she said carefully, "that I have observed things in humans, in you, that challenge everything the Quan have assumed about emotional expression. You combine feelings with effectiveness in ways my people have never considered possible." Kim smiled, that particular smile she had cataloged as her favorite, the one that reached his eyes. "I need to show you something," Taya said suddenly. From a hidden pocket, she removed a small data crystal. "This contains the true purpose of my diplomatic mission." Kim tensed slightly, his training evident in his subtle shift of posture. "It's not what your superiors fear," she assured him. "The Quan aren't planning conquest. We're facing extinction." His expression changed to surprise as she handed him the crystal. "Our genetic line is failing," she explained. "The very traits that made us powerful, our controlled emotions, our perfect logic, have led to reproductive decline. We've engineered ourselves too perfectly, removed too much of our natural instincts." Kim examined the crystal. "And humans? Your species still has genetic diversity, emotional range, adaptability we lost generations ago." Taya's voice softened. "My father sent me to evaluate humans as potential genetic partners for the next generation of Quan." "That's..." Kim struggled for words. "Coldly logical." Taya finished for him. "The Quan way. Evaluate, analyze, decide. No room for emotion in such important matters." "But you disagree," he observed. "Because of you," she admitted. "Because what I've experienced with you isn't just biology or diplomacy. It's something the Quan have forgotten exists." Kim stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "And what is that?" "Connection," she said simply. real connection. 3 days later, Princess Taya stood before the Joint Galactic Council. Representatives from 23 species watched as she broke centuries of Quan tradition by appearing without the full regalia of her station. Instead, she wore a simple diplomatic uniform that incorporated both Quan and human design elements. Emperor Minho sat at the head of the Quan delegation, his disapproval visible in every rigid scale. The Quan have always believed emotional control equals superiority. Princess Taya addressed the Joint Council, her voice clear and confident. But humans have shown me that emotion and logic can coexist, even strengthen each other. Her father's disapproval radiated across the chamber, but she continued. The attack on the diplomatic mission revealed truths that careful negotiation never could. Lieutenant Kim displayed both tactical brilliance and compassion during the crisis. These are not contradictory traits. Murmurs spread through the assembly as she revealed the Quan genetic crisis, information that had been kept secret for generations. She explained how the Quan approach of emotionless calculation had brought them to the brink of extinction. "We came seeking genetic compatibility," she admitted. "We found something more valuable, a new way of existence." When Lieutenant Kim himself spoke to the council, his honesty impressed even the skeptical Quan elders. He described the attack with military precision, but also spoke of his personal experiences with the princess. "Humans don't fear difference," he explained. "We learn from it. The Quan have technologies and knowledge we can benefit from. We have adaptability and emotional intelligence that could help them. Together, we're stronger than either species alone." The council deliberations lasted 5 days. Emperor Minho argued against his daughter's proposals, insisting on the traditional Quan approach. But for the first time in memory, the Quan elders did not unanimously support their emperor. "The princess speaks wisdom beyond her years," Elder Suk declared. "Perhaps our perfect control has not served us as well as we believed." In the end, a new accord was reached, not the cold, calculating alliance the emperor had planned, but something more organic and revolutionary. A true cultural exchange, with both species learning from each other. 3 months later, as they formalized the new Human-Quan cultural exchange program, Princess Taya and Lieutenant Kim stood side by side on the observation deck of the newly constructed joint embassy. Through the viewport, Earth glowed blue and green below them, while the massive Quan royal vessel hung in orbit nearby, physical symbols of the bridges they were building. Kim glanced at the princess when no one else was looking. "Your scales still change color when we're alone," he noted with a small smile. Taya didn't try to control the iridescent shimmer that spread across her facial scales, a response that once would have mortified her. "A problem I've stopped trying to correct," she replied. "Some reactions cannot be controlled, only understood." The shifts in color had become precious to both of them. Honest communication beyond words or diplomatic protocols. Far across the galaxy, on countless personal communication devices, a story spread through Galactic Reddit. An anonymous post detailing the unexpected connection between a Quan royal and a human soldier captured the imagination of beings from hundreds of worlds. The post became legendary, eventually becoming the most upvoted post in interspecies relations history. Its simple message resonated with countless beings. Sometimes the most profound diplomacy happens not in grand councils or formal treaties, but in those quiet moments when two different souls recognize something of themselves in each other. Princess Taya never confirmed she was the author of that original post, but sometimes, when the story was mentioned in her presence, her scales would shift to a particular shade of blue, the one Lieutenant Kim had come to recognize as happiness.